plus conferencing. Enter your... Thank you. After the tone, state your name, followed by the pound or hash sign. Thank you. You will now be placed into conference. To mute your line, press *6. To unmute, press #6.
Instructor within ICS, and it's drilling down into when you have to do something, when you don't have to do something, who's responsible, what happens if it's a gray area and one person's not there and the other person has to sit in. That's part of it. The second portion of the 300 is more related to people that are in management that are at health systems or health departments. So they have to take the 300 course, which is just like the 200 course. It just means that they have a little bit more intel into when there's a state of emergency, how do they coordinate with the federal government on different aspects, what additional forms do they have to use, and the like. And that's kind of the distinction between 200 and 300. Any questions with that?
Duane?
Yes, sir.
It's Chris Weiss, and Michelle Lagana is waiting for this PowerPoint.
Sure, Chris. I'll go ahead and forward this to you.
Everyone else get it?
No, I didn't get one as well. This is Joby Kilcock at Brandywine.
Okay.
This is Kevin. I'm still waiting for it.
Okay, let me just go ahead and send it again, guys. Sorry, everybody, if you could just give me 1 second. I just want to make sure that I have everybody's email real quick, and I will just resend. Just give me 2 secs. Alrighty. The folks that are on the line, let's go BMS first. And you just want me to send it to Michelle, right?
For her and I'm not sure. Bonnie?
We have ours. Thank you.
I'll go ahead and send it to Bonnie, too. And, Chris, if you could just tell me your email real quick.
Sure. It's Christopher W.
Christopher W. At BMS.
I'm sorry. That's bad. Christopher.
I got it. I'm sending it to them.
Thank you so much. Let's go to Greater Baden, Joby.
Okay. JKEO.
KEO.
KUK. Okay. At gbms.org.
gbms.org. Let me just read that back. It's J as in John, K as in kangaroo, E, O as in octopus, U as in umbrella, K.
No. After the O is another K, as in kilo.
Okay. After the O, there's another K. And then,
yes, and then uniform, U, and then kilo again.
Okay.
And then at greaterbaden.org, gbms.org.
Got it. Anybody else that's on the line that didn't get it?
Chris Weaver.
Chris Weaver. And Chris, I have yours here. Let me just pull it up. Weaver. Is it C. Weaver?
No, it's K.
K. Weaver. So sorry. Got it. Anybody else?
Community Health Center.
Duane?
Yeah.
Duane, this is Winnie from Family Health Centers of Baltimore.
Hey, Winnie.
Hi, can you send it to me?
Sure. Winnie McCrae, WMC Cray at Family
Right,
Health
at fhcb.org.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go. Guys, anybody else really quickly
Well,
before
Bonnie forwarded it to us.
Yeah.
Bonnie forwarded it to you guys?
He was asking to
Yes, Katrina Jones, K. Jones at hdmc.org.
K. Jones at hdmc.org. Got it. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Alrighty, I'm sending it again right now. Perfect. Okay, so you guys should have the PowerPoint in like 2 seconds. If you don't have it, you'll have it in a second, and we'll just get going. So as I was explaining, ICS 200, there's 2 different ones. There's a normal one for like other people that are not healthcare organizations, and then there's one which is called ICS or IS 200 HCA, which just means applying to healthcare organizations. We're doing the one, of course, that's applying to us as health centers. which is for the healthcare organizations. There's about 114 slides in this deck. So I went through chapters. There's about 8 modules. I did 1 through like 6, I think, in this PowerPoint, and then I'm going to send you guys the second deck, which is just another 30 slides or so. We're going to do 2 things. One, I want everybody to look at the PDF that I sent and pull that up and print that off if you could. The reason I'm doing that is the actual test that you will take on FEMA. So all the NIMS courses, ICS 100, 200, 400, 700, and 800 are all on FEMA.org's website. They're all free, but what we have to do as health centers is we want to, particular people that are over the emergency preparedness, you want to take 100, 200, 400, 700. You don't need to necessarily take 800, but we're going to be doing 400, 700, and 800 over the next 3 months. So you'll be able to be completely certified. The overall goal is to make sure that your agency, most of the people within your agency, is at ICS level 100, which is basic understanding of the incident command structure. The reason why that's so important is 2 reasons. One, if there was an incident, you want to make sure that everybody knows what to do. And 2, as health centers, we're required to have an emergency preparedness plan as part of your cooperative agreement with HRSA, with the Bureau of Primary Health Care, and you're obligated to test that plan. So part of our EP planning grant that we have is to, 1, give you guys these kind of trainings, and 2, go out and try to test these plans as much as possible with you all. And so the basics are the ICS 100 and 200, the upper level 400, 700, and 800. Those are when we get into a lot more detail, but not everybody needs to know that. The overall organization should have a good understanding of the ICS basics, which is we're going to kind of do a little bit of that within 200 as a review, and then we'll kind of get into some specifics.
Excuse me, Duane, this is Winnie. I didn't get the email.
All right, I'm going to email it again, Winnie.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Duane, I didn't get it as well. This is Joe B. at Brandywine.
Joe. Jay.
And Kevin, too. It hasn't come in for me either.
Let me just do a save and a send and reply one more time, because maybe it's just stuck in cyberspace. A send to receive. Hold on for 1 sec, guys. I see another one going out, but I'm not sure. I see something that went out. All right, and let me just do this one more time. So for Winnie, you need it
WMCCRAY at FHCB.org.
Got it. And Kevin?
It's K as in Kevin, and then L-O, F as in Frank, T as in Tom, U as in United, and S as in States, at LorettaHealthCenter.org.
LorettaHealthCenter.org. Okay, and Jay?
And Kobe, J, Juliet, Kilo, Echo, Oscar, Kilo, Uniform, Kilo, at gbms.org.
Okay. Got it. And I'm sending again to all 3 of you guys. Alrighty. And so you guys should have it in 1 second. I'm doing another send and receive just to make sure that it's going. And it's sending now, so it should be there in a second. So the reason why I want you to print out the PDF is that's actually the final exam, which you'll take online. So, of course, as emergency preparedness folks at your health center, we want to make sure that you can say on your next application that you're certified in ICS 100, 200, 400, and 700. You don't need to necessarily do 800, but hey, since we're going to go over it, be certified. And so, and it's still going, guys. It's just taking a little longer than normal. It may be the file size because it's a big file. And then I'll just have, I did CC Deetra, and I'll have her to continue to try to send them out as we go forward, just to make sure you guys get it, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and get right into the actual webinar, the content. So ICS 200, it describes the ICS, or the Incident Command Structure, our system for organizations, particularly relative to what specific things that happen at an incident. How do you bring up ICS or command structure? How do you take it down? Who does what? How do you coordinate with other agencies and other organizations? And it's utilized, of course, to manage events. What you do expect and gain from the course, essentially you're going to get a good understanding of ICS. You're going to get a really good understanding of the roles and responsibilities. Who's there's a thing called unified command versus unity command versus span of control. You're going to learn all of those things in this webinar. All right? So incident command structure, why do we use it? Really to ensure that the incident is managed effectively. ICS is one of those common terminologies that everybody, all the EMS people, the hospital systems, the federal government, the state and local governments are all trained in the same exact system of command structure. The reason why that's so important is that we have a lot of terminology that gets tossed around, and in the incident, there's all these people that may come onto the scene. So, for example, if there was a fire that we saw that was right outside of a health center, or that happened at the health center, who's in control first during that fire? Who's there? The people at the health center. So you all are kind of the incident commander at the time of the fire. You then call 911. Say a police officer that's driving by sees the flames coming out of your building, and they stop. Now who's the incident command structure? Or who's the incident commander? The police will take over for safety and trying to get people out of the building, right? And they'll coordinate with whoever the EP coordinator is, or whoever the incident commander is. When the fire department comes on, then the chief or whoever the police officer will talk to the fire official and get a debriefing. They will also be asking you to debrief them. That is called a transfer of command, because the overall incident really should be handled by who? Fire, police, or you?
Fire.
Fire, right, because that's what they do, right? They put out fires. That's why you have a whole fire department. So that is why ICS structure is so important, because you can't have fire trying to be in control, you trying to be in control, and the police trying to be in control. That would be a little crazy, right, during an incident. So we utilize ICS management structure to make sure that nobody overlaps each other, but we complement each other during an incident. Of course, this will be really critical, again, at the one that I just gave you, but it happens over and over and over again. So this course, again, is going to build off of the ICS features that we had before in ICS 100. We're going to be talking about common terminology, modular organization, management by objectives, reliance on an incident action plan, chain of command and unity command, unified command, manageable span of control, pre-designation of incidents, locations, and facilities, resource management, accountability, and deployment. So here's all the 8 courses that I told you. We're going to really get only to Unit 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. These are really brief. I was able to combine all 4 of these units into about 30 slides. You will note the meat, which is 104 slides, is this first section that we're going to go over. I didn't want to spend more than 2 hours, so I dropped that last 30 because I thought you guys probably would die already at 114 slides. So when I had 150 slides, I was like, okay, Duane, that's way too much information for anybody to digest at one time. So we're just going to stop at the 114. Is everybody okay with that?
Sounds good.
Okay, so again, NIMS, which is the National Incident Management System, that is the larger national agenda. NIMS utilizes incident command structure, coordination between different organizations and different departments or different systems. So, for example, when FEMA is on the line or is at an incident, CDC is also there, and say HRSA is there, or HHS, a division of it, Bureau of Primary Health Care, for example. Maybe they send some National Health Services Corps to help out on an incident. FEMA will be the main incident command structure, even though the CDC will have to be there, and even though you have people from the Bureau, the FEMA will be the incident commander, but that's called coordination of services or coordination between teams during an incident. So even our National Incident Management Control System, it utilizes Incident Command, or ICS, the Incident Command System, as the backbone of everything. So other ICS mandates are hazard materials incidents. There's a thing called the SARA in 1986. OSHA guidelines also follow ICS mandates, and so does JCO. So kind of moving forward. So to complete ICS 200 ACA, the test, you have to pass it with a 70% or better. I am going to send out ICS, found a smaller course summary guide, which will help you guys when you take the course. And when you guys do take the course, we do want to email, you'll get an email notification saying, hey, congratulations, you passed the course. We'd love to see an email back to us saying, hey, I successfully passed that. You can send that both to Nika and I. That allows us to be able to track how well the courses are going and how you guys are progressing at your own agencies. So the first unit is going to be on the leadership and management. So the big objectives for this section are to kind of talk about chain of command, formal communication relationship, identifying common leadership responsibilities, span of control versus module development, and describe the use of positions and titles. Because this course kind of is picking up on ICS 100, there's a lot of repetition that I'm trying to build in, because that was a while ago that we did ICS 100. That was last year. So you, just to familiarize yourself, I put the incident command structure throughout the course of this, so it's kind of repeating it about 4 or 5 times intentionally, so that you guys start to remember the information. All right? So chain of...
Hey, Duane, this is Kevin. I just got the PowerPoint presentation. What slide number are you on right now?
Thanks. I'm on slide number 15, Kevin.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So we're on chain of command. So when you look at this big old graph, this is what the incident command structure looks like, or the ICS structure. Generally, the incident commander is whoever is the most knowledgeable. It doesn't necessarily mean hierarchy. So a lot of the CEOs would like to be called the incident commander, as you all know, right? Because they're the CEO. But they're probably not the person that's most qualified for the job. You are probably the most qualified for the job if you're the person that's in and out of the actual EP plan, because you'll know, and you've drilled this and you've written the policy, so you'll know what all the policies and procedures are. Say you're not on site, but you're a person that you've been working really closely with, say the CFO, the comptroller, the CMO, even a secretary. If that person has helped you create the manual and you say you're out of town, then you want that person to be the incident commander. It's the person who's the most knowledgeable at your shop on emergency preparedness that gets to be the incident commander. Okay? So we call it chain of command for a reason. So the incident commander is over everything. They generally have deputized officers, and that's the command staff. That's the public information officer. That person's role is to go out and be the liaison between the health center and the public. So when the press comes and wants a statement, there was a shooting at your health center. Generally, the CEO wants to be the person that goes out and talks and try to assure the public, hey, we're doing everything that we can. The CEO might be the appropriate person if they're the person that normally talks to the press. But if you have another person, like a communications director, then you want that person to be your public information officer, and they will talk to the press. You could have the CEO obviously present. The CEO might say a comment or two, but when they talk about the incident itself, you want to give that over to the public information officer. The safety officer is generally the person that's responsible for health and safety. So that is like the person that might be the health officer or the safety officer at your health center. They're the person that understands the security. They have the layouts of where are the exits, all those kind of things. That person would be called the safety officer. The whole goal of having a safety officer is to ensure that if there was an incident, like, for example, we had a person that came in with a gun, then we're trying to isolate that person in one area and get everybody else out of the health center as quickly as possible. So if they were in the lobby and we have another exit that's towards the back, we want to get everybody else outside of the building towards the back, away from the shooter, right? That would be the role and the responsibility of the safety officer. The liaison officer, that person's whole role is to make sure that they're liaisoning with the police, they're talking to them, and we're going to stay with the same scenario about a shooter or a person that has a gun in your facility. That person would be talking to the police, kind of describing the incident, and that's what that person's whole function is. The general staff, which is not within the command staff, but the general staff, that's where you have the operations section, the planning section, the logistics, and the finance and admin. Operations is exactly what it sounds like. They set up operations if we need water, if we need to walk through whatever, we need to look at the supplies. That's kind of, some of that is logistics, but operations is the person that's mainly over how is this incident going to unfold, who needs to do what when. The planning section, they have a whole other separate role, and we'll be talking about that a little bit in a minute. The logistics has a separate role. It's all by themselves, and we'll describe that in a second. Finance and admin sounds exactly what it is. And underneath the operations section, you could have what's called branches. So underneath the general staff, and there's two areas where you have branches, the operations section and the logistics section, you can have branches. There's a whole other thing called divisions, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Does everybody understand kind of how this works in terms of chain of command?
Yep.
Okay, great. So again, the incident commander is the top, and then it kind of flows from there. All right, unity of command, which is different than chain of command. Unity of command, under unity of command, there's all the personnel, they report to only one supervisor. They don't report to everybody on the planet. So if you have, back to slide 15, if you had a person that was down here in the planning section, or, let's say a sub-person that's under planning, they would only be reporting up to the planning section chief person or the division lead there. They wouldn't be going and trying to report to the incidents commander. That would be a bad thing, right? Because the incidents commanders should only be talking to the command staff and the people in the general staff, whoever the head is. They receive work assignments only from their supervisors. Don't confuse unity of command with unified command, which we're going to get over into in 1 second. Unity versus unified, what is the difference between the two? A unified command is the organization consists of the incident commanders from the various jurisdictions. So that's when we have the fire and the police officers on the scene. They're supporting one another, but they're not overlapping each other. That's what's called unified command structure versus unity of command. Make sense between the two? So if you take out your final exam and we look at question number 1, and I'm kind of guiding you through this without giving you the answer, right? Question number 1 says, blank means that each individual involved in an incident operation will be assigned to only one supervisor. We haven't talked about span of control yet, is that one of these four: span of control, unity of control, supervisor authority, or unified command?
B, unity of command.
Unity of command is B. That is the correct answer. Thank you so much. Unified command features also says a single integrated incidents organization, collected and shared facilities, one set of incident objectives, single planning process. So if you had, again, say we're going to utilize fire as our big incident. So even though we have a unified command structure, the big, most important thing in that unified command structure is to put out the fire and get everybody to safety. That is a single objective for everybody that's on the incident, right? So that's the single planning process. That's the big incident objective. Get everybody out of the building, put out the fire. Everybody out, put out the fire. So, again, you would have a unified command structure that the fire department, once they're on the scene, they would take, as incident commanders, they would take control and get information from the police officer that was already on the scene and yourself, who is at the health center, that would be giving them what's called a debriefing on what's going on in terms of the incident. So if you've already gotten everybody out of the building, the fire's on the second floor, it's in the computer room, and you have built in a fire, I don't know, you had a really good design. So you built in, and it's brick, and you have a firewall that's protecting that room from any other room, then you could be explaining that information as the EP coordinator or the incident commander here from your site to that fire official. Okay. So the next is just a few slides around unified common benefits, of course, a shared understanding of priorities and restrictions, a single set of incident objectives, collaborative strategies, improved internal and external information flow, less duplication of efforts, and better resource utilization. This was the activity that I was going to have you do, but I'm not going to do that. We'll go straight into communications overview. So, again, in terms of formal communication process, generally that incident objectives, what's our main goal, here are the 5 things that are activities that we need to do. That's a formal communication. That's telling everybody, we want you to do this, this, and this. That doesn't mean that you can't have an informal communication, because informal communication happens all the time. That's where you're talking across the department. So in the general staff, for example, if the operations section chief needed to talk to the logistics section chief, I need more water, I need food, I need to assess how much, if we had to shelter in place for 2 days, how much water do we have? That's an informal conversation back and forth. It is not a directive, right? It's not, you got to give me this, you got to give me that. It's just 2 colleagues talking. That's what we call informal communication versus informal communication, which is an incident commander is telling everybody, I need you to do this, this, and this, and this. That's more of a formal communication process. Everybody follow that?
Yep.
Any questions?
Yes.
All right. So just going to say when to use formal communication. Formal communication must be used when receiving and giving assignments, requesting support or additional resources, and reporting progress of assigned tasks. That's when you want to use formal communication. Informal communication is used to exchange incident or event information only. It is not used for formal requests for additional resources nor tasking work assignments. Within ICS organizations, critical information must flow freely. So you're always updating, you're always doing back and forth. But again, if I needed a formal request for additional resources, so if from an operations perspective, from the operations section chief, I needed the logistics people to get me 5 new, I don't know, get on the phone to Pizza Hut, because we're going to be here for 5 days. We need to order 100 pizzas. That's a formal request. But if you look at the structure in terms of that general command structure, who else needs to be informed if the operations person was asking that kind of request? Which other group within the general staff? You need money, right?
Yeah.
You get the pizza. So who's over the money?
Finance.
Finance.
Yes. Finance is over the money. So there'll be a formal request of finance to release the funds so that operations or so the logistics people can actually order the pizza. But the formal request would have came from the operations over to Julie, to both finance and to the logistics people. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
All right. So let's look at question number 2 on our little test here. Let me do this one last little slide here. Examples of communications are including the command unit, communications unit leader may direct contact with the resource unit leader to determine the number of persons requiring communication devices. The cost unit, which would be the finance unit leader, may directly discuss and share information on alternative strategies with the planning section chief. Both of these are examples of informal communication, but if I needed that resource, if I need to actually, please give me $100 so that I can do X, that's considered a formal request as opposed to just information sharing. So let's get that and go straight into here. So select the true statement. A, formal communication is used in reporting progress of assigned task. B,
True.
which is true, right? B,
True.
informal communication is prohibited within incident command structure. Is that true?
False.
Prohibited? That's false. Formal communication is used for exchanging all incident information. Is that true or false?
False.
False. Informal communication is the preferred method of communicating resources needs.
False.
False. So, by default, A, which is the only true statement there, is the correct answer. Yay,
Right.
there you go us. Woo-hoo. Okay. So, discussion question. Why is the leadership an essential element in the successful incident management? So, when we think about leadership, why is it so important that people are keeping that chain of command? What happens if that doesn't happen, if we don't keep a chain of command?
Things fall through the cracks.
Things fall through the cracks. We won't know what the other person's doing.
All right.
It sounds familiar to some of you all. I know it does to me. So sometimes when we're in organizations, one side of the organization might be doing something that has nothing to do but has an implication with us in our department. So if nursing, for example, decides they're going to hire 7 people, but they don't talk to finance, then the budget is blown.
Right.
What happens? Who gets chewed out at the end of the day? The CFO and the comptroller will be chewed out at that organization by the CEO because it's way over budget. And then, of course, it rolls downhill, so the CFO will go to whoever the nursing head person is and say, how did you, or to HR, how did you authorize this without coming through me? Same thing is true here in terms of the leadership. So, of course, leaders means providing the purpose, direction, and motivation for responders working to accomplish difficult tasks under dangerous and stressful circumstances. So this is underlying one critical point. Our having the emergency preparedness plan, why it's so important is that during an incident, everybody is stressed. It's a heightened time, right? If it was a hurricane or if there was even we had no water for the day, and I have a dental unit, that will be a problem, right? Because you can't do all the things that you need to do if you have no water coming into the building. That would be bad, as well as like toilets and just water just for sanitary purposes. So people get real stressed out, and all of a sudden they forget about the emergency preparedness plan, and they forget about the incident command structure. Now, I'm talking to you all as people that are not necessarily CEOs at your organization, because you're going to have to manage up, because your CEO will want to take control of the situation because they're the CEO and they have to report to the board, right? But it is not in their best interest nor the organization's interest for them to take hold of incident command structure or become the incident commander if they don't know your EP plan like you do. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So common leadership responsibilities is a good operational leader will communicate effectively, supervise the scene, evaluate the effectiveness of the plan, understand, accept the need to modify the plan and instructions, ensure safe work practices, takes command of assigned resources, motivates with can-do safely attitude, and demonstrates initiative by taking action. This leads us to question number 3. Let me just go through one more slide here, the leadership duties. Know and understand the practices of the leadership principles, recognize the relationship between these principles and the leadership values, and commit to excellence in all aspects of professional responsibility. So, when we look at question number 3, which is the top priority among the ICS common leadership responsibilities? And a hint is we're going to go off of slide 30. So, which is the top priority among ICS common leadership responsibilities? Ensuring safe work practices, that's A. Establishing agency policies for future incidents, that's B. C is encouraging creativity and risk-taking. You know that don't sound right. And D, enhancing partnerships with agency representatives.
A.
A is the correct answer. Very good, everybody. Go us. Woo-hoo. Okay, we're going to kind of speed it up a little bit. We're going to skip over some of these leadership slides, and let's go to slide, because this is just saying the same thing like 12,000 times, just to hone it in. We're going to go to slide 36, which is communication responsibilities. So to ensure sharing of critical information, responders must brief others as needed, debrief their actions, communicate hazards to others, acknowledge messages, and ask if they don't know. This ask if they don't know is really, really critical, particularly amongst the debriefs. So just like we have huddling within PCMH, that kind of construct of the huddle is something that you do all the time within incident command structure. So you're always going to be huddling, going for 30 minutes, bringing the group back together. Where are we in the situation? What else do we need? And asking each person within the general staff and the command structure what is needed right now in this incident. All right? So this is just briefing elements. So when we're briefing or doing a brief, provide complete briefings that include clearly stated objectives and the following elements: task, what is to be done; purpose, why is it to be done; and the end state, how it should look when it's done. So how does it look when it's done, what it has to be done, and why is it to be done. That's really, really critical. Kind of put a pinpoint in that slide for me, because there is a section that's going to talk about briefing a little bit later in your test, and it's on question 11. And just kind of star that, because that's going to help you answer that question when we get there. So incident management, and this is called like IAP is another incident action plan or incident report. It's Form 201 is going to be a form that you're going to kind of commit to memory. It's the form that has to be, every time there is an incident, you should be utilizing Form 201. So it just is an assessment method, which includes a corrective action plan, kind of post-incident, a debriefing, post-incident critique, and mitigation plan. So, for example, if we had an incident and say it was a fire and we were able to contain it without having to get anybody, it was a really small fire, it happened in the computer, the server room, and it just was a short, and we were able to put it out very, very fast. We would still want to write up the incident, and then we would want to say, so how are we going to avoid this? How do we mitigate this in the future? Who should be looking at this on an ongoing basis so that we don't have this? Maybe you didn't have a surge protector on it. Maybe there was a power outage. Maybe, there's all kinds of things that could have caused that fire, but what are we going to do differently moving forward, and who do we need to debrief? You probably want to debrief the entire team, but does that Mean everybody in the incident command structure? No, you didn't even have to do all of that, the whole build the team and then have all these. You didn't need finance and administration. You didn't have to do all that because it was a 10-minute incident. You pulled it out as soon as you saw it, and you were able to contain it. But you still need to go back to whoever would be your finance person. You still need your CEO is going to want some kind of debrief. You need to kind of think about a mitigation plan as the EP coordinator. So that is called the incident management assessment, as well as also the incident action plan. How are we going to avoid this in the future? It's basically to help you debrief about that incident and make a correction action plan moving forward. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay. All right. So common terminology. I can't stress this enough. Just like we have alphabet soup in community health center world, like F2HC. If you go from, like you talk to hospital people, they don't know what that means. If you are an accountant and you talk about ONB Circular 133 and you talk to a nurse, she won't know what that means. A nurse will talk about, HbA1c levels, and the finance people don't know what that means. That means that terms are very specific for industries. So we want to use common terminology that is relative to EP, and then help everybody understand that language kind of throughout our agency so that everybody is actually on the same page and not talking alphabet soup. So we want to make sure that people understand our organizational functions, the incidents, facilities, the resource description, and position titles. We want to use plain English when we're trying to illustrate a point to people. Do not use radio codes, agency-specific codes, or any type of jargon. Say, if I want water, just say, I want water. Don't do a H2O, hashtag, something, something. Don't do any of that. Just say, I need water. And then be very specific. If I need water, do I need gallons of water? Do I need bottles of water? What do you need? So you want to be as clear as possible in your communication internally and of course externally as you're talking to other stakeholders. So this is just going to be an ICS overview one more time in terms of, so you're going to see this map a whole lot. So remember I told you about the top portion, the incident commander, the public information officer, the liaison officer, and the safety officer. What are all these four called? Does anybody remember? Those four people are called the public information officer, the safety officer, the command staff. Thank you very much. Great job. Going right to the front of the class there. So underneath them is the operations section, the planning section, the logistics section, and the finance and administration section. What is this section? What are these sections called? So if this was called the command staff, this is called the
General staff.
The general staff. Very good. The reason why we're going to be banking on that is because these next series of questions kind of ask you about what's the distinction between all these people and why are they important. Remember I said underneath the operations section and underneath the logistics section, you can have what's called branches. So you can have a branch like that is another subsection that could have everything from a strike team, a task force, or a single resource, which goes to a division. So the branch would just say in the operations section, which is over the overall operations of the incident, the operations that may say, hey, we need a really quick task force to look into this issue for us during this incident. For example, we may need to, we're sheltering in place. We had a person that had, let's say, West Nile virus that came into our facility, and now we have 4 people kind of presenting with the exact same symptoms. We get a call from our city's emergency planner people, and they say, we understand that you have sent over, you have 4 people that have these flu-like symptoms, and what we have determined is that the CDC has just issued that there's a new outbreak of whatever. We want you to shelter in place, isolate those people, and keep them away from everybody, but no one from your facility can leave because we don't know how quickly this virus can spread. We don't know if it's airborne or not. So you say, you set up your incident command structure, and under operations, you're going to have a task force, which is a small group, and you're going to say, I want you, task force people, to do these 4 things. We need to make sure that we're able to isolate these people. Where in the building would be the best way to do that? 2, we might have some kind of machine that takes the bad air, sucks in, takes the bad air and filters it and makes it into good air. Do we have a machine like that? Talk to logistics to see if we have that. That would be considered a task force, which is underneath the operations section, underneath the branch, and it's called a division, and then that's a small group of people that are going to do that, which is called a task force. I hope that made sense, how that worked. Underneath the planning section, you can always have what's called units. And so the units are like the resource unit, which would mean what resources we need, a situation unit. Say, for example, we have this situation that's ongoing, such as we have to shelter in place for a few days. That situation unit may need to be over how do we do this, how do we get food, how do we plan it out, and all of that. And then once the incident's over, we have to demobilize everything that we built up. So, for example, if you had to shelter in place for 3 days, do you have cots in place or pillows or blankets or any of things like that? So if you had your team that could not leave that building, or say you only had 8 team members there, how do we accommodate those 8 team members if we have to stay here for 2 days? So that would be the planning section. The other thing is underneath the logistics section, you have the service branch and the support branch, and then you have these units again, the supply unit, the facilities unit. You could have ground support if that's what you needed. You could have the food unit, the medical unit, the communications unit. All that is regarding logistics. In terms of finance and admin, they also have units just like the other 2 that you see for logistics section and the planning section, and that's like the time unit, procurement unit, did we need to purchase something, the cost unit, tracking the cost of this incident. Particularly if it was something like a state of emergency that the governor has said, hey, there's a state of emergency because we have this outbreak. Once that occurs, you can get reimbursed for every dime that you spend above and beyond for any type of emergency preparedness. So you really want to track your costs. Overtime for those people, which is in the time unit. Compensation and claims if you had additional compensation. So there was an incident and you had to do workers' comp, somebody slipped and fell, or somebody got hurt while they were trying to resuscitate somebody or whatever, you want to have within the finance section all these different units that are kind of tracking the information, and that's called units. So just really quickly, in the general staff, those are called sections, and the above that, within the command staff, those are called officers. So the operation is the sections. All these people in the command staff are called officers, which is different. And then, of course, we have branches, which you could have a branch person under logistics section, and you can have that under under the operations section. So, again, here's another illustration on slide 43 that shows you that one more time and who's responsible for what. So, when we look at, just really quickly, let me just go over one quick thing around branches. Go back one. Branches generally come together for 2 things. It's by geography. So if you had an organization that had multiple sites, then you could have the operations section, but you could have branches that's over every site. So just like you guys may have a site supervisor over every site, that person could be the branch lead or the branch person, and that's by geography or functional. So they could be either way. Functional would be in the sense of logistic support on that branch. All right? Make sense? Or as clear as mud?
Makes sense.
Makes sense. All right. Last two things here before we keep on moving here is we're going to talk a little bit about a concept that's called span of control, and you're going to see this 2 more times in the presentation. ICS span of control. It just means that for one person, how many people can that supervisor really oversee? So if I was in the general command structure, how many people should be underneath that one person? Generally, it's between 3 and 7 subordinates to every supervisor. Optimally, you don't want to exceed 5 people. So you shouldn't have one person that's over 14 people. It's unlike when you think about like a chief operating officer or controller that might have, several accountants under them, or a nurse supervisor that might have 30 nurses over her or him. It's not that. In an incident, you want to really isolate how many people are reporting up to one person because the incident is already heightened. So you can't have a span of control that's too much, otherwise you lose control over the incident. All right? So what influences the span of control? The span of control is influenced by the type and the complexity of the incident or event, the nature of the response, or the task distance and safety. Those are big pieces of the span of control. One other thing just really quickly is this modular organization. So every team, division, group, branch, or section is organized when the supervisor ratio exceeds 7. Anytime you have more than 7, then you need to create another team or another division or another group or another something so that you can keep that span of control. All right, we demobilize a unit or a team or a division or a group or a branch or a section anytime that supervisor ratio falls below 3. So say, for example, we have a big incident. We have right in front of your facility, there is a car accident, and it's a 3 to 4 car pileup. And you have to mobilize everybody in the command structure and all of your general staff also have to kind of bone up. Simultaneously, you're thinking that you probably do need to have at least 1 or 2 other folks in terms of branches that you may have to look at. So you say, within my finance unit, we are incurring some additional costs that we didn't plan on because we had to run out to the store to get additional masks, or we use all the masks that we have here, all the fire and safety emergency preparedness kits. We've used them all up, so I have to reorder. That would be a procurement unit. So that finance administrative section had to build that unit up. But as the incident goes on and the fire and the police come on the scene, you then have to demobilize. So you don't need that finance unit as much. You only just need the procurement unit. You might not need the cost unit. You may not need the logistical section for the medical unit any longer after the incident has been controlled. So that's when we're demobilizing a situation. Once you're doing that, you're getting lower and lower in terms of the number of people that are involved in the incident. That's why they say that you'll go up to modularize and build out. When you have a bigger incident, as you're demobilizing, you're getting lower and lower on the number of people that you need in the incident. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. All righty. So we're going to just answer a few questions right now and see how we do with this. Okay. So question number 4 on your test talks about these levels of ICS organization may have a deputy position. Oh, you don't know that yet. We'll skip that one. Let's go to number 5 instead. Branches within ICS organizations can be established geographically or functionally along agency jurisdictional lines within groups to organize resources under the supervision of a leader. Remember I was talking a little bit about you could have various site locations, and those would be considered branches. So that could be either
geographically or functionally.
Or functionally, correct. So that would be your correct answer there under B. So let's just kind of talk a little bit about ICS supervisors, and then we'll be able to answer question number 4. So this is the organization, and I'm on slide 50. At the organizational level, you have the incidents commander. The title is called incidents commander. The support position is called a deputy. So the deputy will stand in place of the incidents commander if they need that support. So everybody underneath them is the deputy. The command staff is called officers. They have people that support them or assistants. The general staff, which is the section, they are called chiefs. So it's called the finance chief within that section, the logistics chief, and they have the ability to have a deputy as well. If you have a branch, because you have multiple locations, then those are called branch directors. And they also have the ability to have a deputy who is a person that would stand in their say if they weren't able to perform their function or if they were already out for vacation or something during the time of an incident. If you had a division or a group, those people we'll call a supervisor. There's no support position for that person. In a unit, we call everybody that's in that unit a leader, and they have what's called managers, which is a support position. If you have that strike team or a task force, which only occurs if you need something very, very specific, generally you don't need a strike team or a task force. The state may have these things. We generally wouldn't have it because we don't have huge incidents in general, but if you did, and you needed something very, very specific, then you would have a strike team or a task force. That person title would be whoever's over that strike team or task force is called the leader, and then you would have a single resource boss that would be responsible up to that leader. So when we think about who has deputies here, the only groups that could have a deputy is the incidents commander, right? The general staff section, which are the chiefs, they also have a deputy, and whoever the branch person lead is over those various site locations, those directors could have also a deputy. Nobody else gets to have a deputy. So just those 3. So with that information in tow, we can answer question 4. So these levels of the ICS organization may have a deputy position. The branch, the incidents commander, and who else? The
general staff.
Say it again?
General staff.
General staff. So the general staff, which is also called the what?
Section.
Section. Yay, go people. Woo-hoo. So that is D, and that would be the correct answer. So let's go ahead and go to 6, because we did talk about span of control just a second ago. Right?
Yep.
And so we're going to select the true statement. Span of control may be extended beyond a 1 to 10 ratio in order to ensure that more resources can be deployed on complex, large incidents. Is that true or false?
False.
False. Span of control should be established without consideration of factors such as the type of incident, nature of task, hazards, or safety factors. Is that true or false?
False.
False. C, span of control is accomplished by organizing resources into teams, divisions, groups, branches, or sections.
True.
True. Correct. And span of control is less of a factor of a concern for incidents that are resolved within an initial operational period.
False.
False. Span of control should always be there. So the statement here that is true is C. Woo! Go us. All right. So just really quickly, quick quiz. Span of control. Should you have, what's the optimal number for people underneath the span of control?
7.
7.
5 to 7, yeah. So 3 to 7. 5 is the optimal number. 5 is the optimal number. So 3 to 7 is fine for the span of control. Good job, guys. So we're now in section slide 52, and we're in Unit 3, Delegation of Authority and Management by Objectives. So this is going to be some review and a lot of kind of going pretty quickly. So just really quickly, so delegation of authority and process. So underneath this whole section, the very beginning of the section, in Section 3, has to really kind of think about delegation of authority when it comes to a state matter. So who in the state is delegated as the chief incident commander or whoever is actually has the right to order a national incident or a local incident or a statewide incident. So obviously, if we think about at the state level, the governor has the authority, right, and the obligation to say, this is a state of an emergency for our state. So, for example, when there is a winter alert, like we just had a few days ago, and we needed more trucks on the street to put snow down in both states, in Delaware and in Maryland, those governors said, this is a state of emergency. We need more salt. We need more blah. We need more this. That allows the resources to be allocated to the state if it's a state of emergency. It also authorizes people that are doing overtime, so those people that were plowing the snow as well as putting the salt down, if they worked a 14-hour day, they got overtime above and beyond that 8 hours at time and a half or whatever. So those, because of the state of emergency, they get to get paid for that time by whoever is contracted with the state to do that. That's delegation of authority process. So the delegation or the authority is the right or obligation to act on behalf of a department, agency, or jurisdiction. In this instance, I'm talking about a jurisdiction, which would mean the entire state, which would be the governor. Before it ever got up to the governor would have to get a debrief from the Secretary of Health within that state. That would be the department or the agency lead who would be over emergency preparedness that would debrief the governor to say, Governor, we need to do X, right? So when we think about, in most jurisdictions, the responsibility for protecting the citizens rests with whoever the chief elected official is. So if it was at the city level, then it would be whoever the mayor of that city is. When you go one up from the mayor, it's the governor. But when the city official is trying to make a determination, they're talking to the person that's over that city's Department of Health, so their public health officer, right? And then so on and so forth. So the scope of authority in an incident, the incident's commander's scope of authority is derived from the existing law, agency policies, or procedures, and or through a delegation of authority from an agency administrator or elected official. So during a statewide emergency, the incident commander is generally the person that's over emergency preparedness in the state. That person has been delegated the authority by the governor to be the person. The governor gives it to the secretary gives it to whoever's over emergency preparedness, and that person is delegated that authority, and the scope of the authority is for the entire incident. So similarly, at our health center, if we think about it, when you become the incident commander, you're kind of delegated that authority because of your familiarity with emergency preparedness and the EP plan for your organization, even though your job title may not be chief executive officer, right? You're still delegated that authority kind of by the CEO to do your. I hope that makes sense to everybody. So just kind of playing this all the way out. So delegation of authority grants authority to carry out specific functions is issued by the chief elected official or chief executive officer or agency administrator in writing or verbally allows the incident commander to assume command, does not relieve the granting authority the ultimate responsibility for the incident. So even though at the state level the person that's over the emergency preparedness is the incident commander, who is the person who's over the emergency preparedness for that state. It never gives is a direct. I've delegated that authority over, so I'm not responsible for it. The governors can't say that. They can't say, oh, I don't know what happened during that incident. That was just all on my person. The same thing will be true here. If you were the incident commander, your chief executive officer is delegating you the authority. At the end of the day, if the board or the community asks, so what happened during that incident, they would be the person that's ultimately needs to explain, in great detail. They didn't remove themselves from any responsibility. They just delegated that authority. This is just some elements of delegation, which is legal authority and restrictions, financial authorities and restrictions, demographic issues, political implications, agency or geographic, plan of public information management, and plan of ongoing, sorry about that typo, ongoing, not organic, or organic, I don't know what that is, incident evaluation. It just means whoever is over it has to do it. The modular, just to refresh your memory on the modular organization, this develops in a bottom-up modular fashion. So as you need more resources, the size and the complexity of the event, you add more and more layers going down into your organization versus going upward. Last slide here on modular is incident objectives to determine the organizational size. Only functions, positions that are necessary will be filled. Each element must have a person in charge of it. So every time you're doing more and more, you have to have a person that's actually over whatever that is. Just really quickly on management by objectives. So during an ICS incident, there's always a main objective. So the incident commander is the person that makes that determination of what is our overall goal. Of course, if it's a fire, we want to get everybody to safety, put out the fire. If it was an outbreak of some sort, then we want to isolate that incident, who's infected, get them isolated, and keep everybody healthy. That will be the objective. So the ICS, the incident commander, would be the person who identifies that objective. The ICS is managed by those objectives that are come out from the incident commander. Now, it doesn't mean that the incident commander does not listen to everybody that's in that command staff, or all those people get to say, hey, this should be an objective, this is an objective, this should be an objective. And they should all be thinking about it as a command structure, so the liaison officer, right, that person, they should be thinking, so what is my role? My role is to communicate what to, not just internally, how should I be telling everybody about this incident? How should I be telling the press about this incident? How do I manage that? So objectives are communicated throughout the entire ICS organization through the incident planning process. Step one is understand the organization policy and direction. 2, assess the incident situation. 3, establish the incident objectives. 4, select the appropriate strategy or strategies and to help achieve that objective. Perform the tactical direction and provide necessary follow-up. So overall, if you think about if we had these big kind of lists of things that have to happen, life and safety, the safety is the first. Life-saving mission is the #1 objective. Incident stabilization, control the fire and stabilize it. Property or economic preservation, also the last. First, get people out. Second, how do I stabilize this incident and only contain it to here? And then last is property preservation. Can I save the building? Can I save our server? Can I save supplies? All that good stuff. Make sense? Any questions? All right. So every incident must have, again, this IAP that I talked about earlier, the incident action plan, that specifies the incident's objectives, states the activities to be completed, covers a specified time frame called an operational period. Any type of an operational period, so say, for example, the operation continues to go and it's going for a while, then you'll have a shift from one person to the next person. That is called a shift in the incident, or you're transferring operational command or incidents command to somebody else. a debrief has to happen, and then an assignment that this new person is now the incident commander. That all has to be communicated to everybody so people don't get confused. This may be oral or written, except for hazard materials incidents, which requires a written IAP. Some elements within the IAP are what do we want to do, who is responsible for doing it, how do we communicate with each other, and what is the procedure if someone is injured, like a staff member, and what's our obligation to them if they were injured. How does that work? Just quick things here. Working as a team, identify. So this would be if we wanted to do this incident action plan. So let's just say we're going to try to do this really quickly. It's 11:17. We have time. So say for example, you have there is an accident right outside your doors. There's a crash in the parking lot, and 5 people are injured. So you're trying to do your incident command, or incident action plan, and what is the very first thing that you needed to do to write up the incident? And let's look back at 64 to help you do that. Slide 64. So, in terms of priorities, what's the very first thing? What do we want to do? Parking lot, big old crash, 5 people are injured. What's the very first thing? Come on, y'all. I know this is
about assess the situation.
Yeah, so you got to assess the situation, right. So the situation is, how hurt all these people, right? Maybe it's something that we can do really, really quickly. But if there was, a lot of blood, somebody looks like, we try to move them and they're like, oh, my neck, oh, my back, then we have to do what we need to do to kind of get everything going, right? So you're
like
in the situation. Go ahead.
I was just saying something maybe like a triage where you just set people up accordingly,
Correct.
Delays.
Because they got to come through the front door, right? And you say this all happened at 10 o'clock, right? When your waiting room has 40 people in it.
Right.
So we have to prioritize, right? We need to do some things. We need to triage. We need to figure out where we're going to sit these people. Who's going to do that? How is that going to do? How is it going to work? Who's responsible for what we're going to do? How do we communicate to everybody that this is the plan? So first, that incident command, you would have to create your ICS structure, right, first. So you as the incident commander says, okay, this happened out in the parking lot. Let's get these 5 people in here right now. You huddle, you assess, you do, and you get to work. We're going to need a triage. We're going to need somebody to take all these people that are in the waiting area and tell them this is what's going on right now and announce that to the patients. This will be a small delay. We're going to have to go ahead and make a makeshift something over here to triage these people. So that's exactly what you would do. So to do that, you would be thinking about this IAP. And right now, it's not important. It's informal because you don't have time to write it down. You're just trying to get it done, right? So you're just communicating. Later on, you'll be writing it down after the incident happened. All right. Good job, guys. So functional areas and positions. This is going to be probably the most tedious of what we've done so far, only because it's all the little ins and outs of who does what, where, all that good stuff. So again, we've talked about the incidents commander before. This commander has the overall incidents management responsibility that's delegated by the appropriate jurisdictional agent or authority or by the chief executive officer in the case of a health center. They develop the incident objectives to guide the incident planning process. They approve the incident action plan and all requests pertaining to the ordering and releasing of incidents resources. If you think about the incident commander, upon notification of incident, the higher ranking person will either assume command, maintain command as is, or transfer command. Transfer command is, again, when somebody is going to take over an incident and they're going to become the incident commander. So you are not at the office yet. So your deputy was the person that was the incident commander. They call you and say, this parking lot incident just occurred. What should we do? You tell them, go. Tell them, assemble the team. You're the incident commander until I get there. So that means that I've given that person the command. Even though I'm the incident commander, I've deputized that person to take my role as an incident commander until I got there. Once I get there, this is what's called the transfer of command back to me, and then I would become the incident commander. But we would need to communicate that to everyone, right, at the very onset of that incident, so that there's not confusion to occur.
Duane, I have a question.
Sure.
Hi, this is Anika Duane. So when you communicate this to everyone that, someone has been delegated the incident commander position until someone else is getting there. So is that via email? I'm just trying to figure out whether there could be a gap of communication in between. So
email, it would be so for example, we're taking the parking lot crash scenario. So, for example, it was at Walnut, and Sherry was on her way to the office, but Kim was already at the office, and she's deputy Kim to be the incident commander. So Kim would say, I'm the incident commander. Here's the team that we need to pull together. Everybody within the all the chiefs, and all the command structure, and everybody in the section. Those are the people I'm pulling together first. These are what you have to do. Until Sherry gets here, I'm the person in charge. Once Sherry comes on board, she meets with Kim and says, Kim, what do I need to know? Kim will give her a debrief, and then they will pull the team back together, and that's when the transfer of command happens. So then Kim will say, I'm transferring command over to Cherie. Cherie is now the incident commander. Cherie, what do you need us to do next?
Okay, so it all happens within kind of a huddle, so everyone's aware of what's going on, correct?
All in the huddle. Yeah, and then the most important thing around transfer of command, guys, is that the main core team knows, and that core team then, everybody that's in your span of control, you've communicated that same information that you just received down to them under the span of control, so that nobody goes back and be confused. This is where the tricky part happens within a health center, and it happens not just within a health center, it happens everywhere. So the first officer that comes on a scene is always the person that's in control. But if the chief of police then comes on the scene, transfer of command happens to that chief of police. But until that chief of police gets there, the incident commander is the first officer on the scene. Unfortunately, like this weekend, there was a mall shooting here in Maryland, and the first officers on the scene were the incident commander. Once the chief of police got there, that person then took over. There was a transfer of command, and then the chief of police became the incident commander. So why this is so important is that we have to be telling everybody at our health center in ICS 100 training that we're going to be doing with all our teams, is letting them understand that that's how the ICS structure is set up, so that everybody understands who does what and when. Otherwise, you will have chaos, and they will default to your CEO and look for the CEO to tell them what to do. And everybody will be looking for the CEO to tell them what to do instead of you. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
I hope so. All right, good. Did I answer your question, Anika?
Yes, you did. Thank you, Duane.
You're welcome. So incident commander roles provides overall leadership, incident response, delegates authorities to others, and may take general direction from administrative official. Just going to skip a few slides here. So again, we talked about the command staff. That's the public information officer, the liaison officer, and the safety officer. We've already talked about what their specific roles are already. So let's talk about understanding that general staff a little bit more. So the operations section. This is the operations section, which is part of that general staff. The operations section directs and coordinates all tactical operations. It's typical one on the first section to be assigned develops from the bottom up, has the most incidence resources, may have a staging area for special organizations. A staging area would be like an area that we needed for staging the incident. So if you needed that triage, the operations people might be the group that creates that triage area for triaging people into your facility. That would be the control of the operations section. The operations chief roles are develop and manage the operations section, which is the chief, again, in all the general staff. They're all called in that general staff is in that section. Each section is called the chief. They develop and manage the operations section, develop and implement the strategies and tactics, work very closely with other members of the command and general staff to coordinate tactical activities. This is when the operations section expanding. So underneath the operations chief, you could have a medical care branch director, you could have an infrastructure branch director, you could have hazmat branch director. Most of the time, when you think about the operations section, generally this is a nurse or a clinical people, because they're the people that are doing all the clinical things related to the operations of the incidents. Operation single resource. A single resource may be an individual, a piece of equipment, and its personnel complement, a crew or a team of individuals with an identified supervisor. So, for example, I'm thinking about an incident where we have an overdose. Somebody comes in and they present, and you're treating them just like a normal patient, and then all of a sudden they code while they're in the ER, and you're asking them questions, or you're asking the person that brought them in questions. What was the last things that they ate? Did they take any other type of medication? Are they having an allergic reaction? Are they allergic to anything? Say, for example, you have to have a pharmacist because you don't have a pharmacist on staff, but you contract with the pharmacy, then you might need to utilize a single resource to ask that person. Say that person identifies that they've taken 5 things of codeine today. Well, that's why we're having this response. And then you might have the pharmacist be the single resource to help you understand that more about what's going on. Obviously, you'd be calling 911 by now and getting some emergency assistance to take that person to the hospital. But does that make sense to everybody? So the strike team and the task force, again, we generally want to use these, but oftentimes in incidents where the state is involved, they might have a strike team to deal with and handle like a hostage situation or a bomb scare. They may have, when the police come, they'll call the bomb squad. That bomb squad is a strike team or a task force, and they will come in and do whatever they do, but they're a subsection of another group that you've already called. All right, so maintaining control. The following supervisor levels can be added to help manage and span of control in a division or a group or a branch. In the operations divisions and groups, you can have an operations section, and then you can have all these branches that are all the different people all over the place. When we think of these branches, you can also think about the medical care branch, an infrastructure branch, a hazmat director branch. Those could be branches, or it could be by geography. And we could have a site that's way over here, another site that's downtown, and another site that's a little bit more suburban on the east or the west. Again, it has that functional or geographic expansion for a branch. When we think about the planning section, we're thinking about organizing and directing all aspects of the planning section is the chief's role within that. Basically, those are compiling scenario and resource projections for all section chiefs and affects long-range planning for the incident. How long is this going to happen? What kind of documents do I need to maintain? How am I getting everything back from all these other people in our plan? The most important thing is that the planning section chief is responsible, and the planning section is responsible for the incident action plan. The planning section could have the resource unit, the situation unit. They upload, they figure out what resources are needed, and then they would work with the other groups to make sure that those resources are actually delivered, and then they itemize them. So if you needed more gloves, masks, whatever, the planning section is the person. If this event was going on for 2 days, and then after the event's over, they would be demobilizing. So we don't need all these cots anymore. We were breaking down the cots. We're changing, getting back to normal operations. 2 days later, the planning section would be responsible for doing all of that section. The resource unit within the planning section, this tracks the status of personnel and material resources that are being utilized in various locations of the health center. The situation unit maintains current information regarding the incident status for all health center staff. So they tell everybody, hey, this is what's going on. Hey, this is what's happening. Hey, this is what we're doing to respond. This is really important for communicating internally of what's happening. The documentation unit provides duplication services, including written incident action plans for everybody. So if everybody needs to do, sometimes this happens via email if it's multiple sites, so that the information is happening in real time in terms of the incidents. Obviously, people are picking up the phone and talking as well. They maintain and archive all incidents-related documents. It would be important to document, particularly if you had various site locations, that you're getting incidents updates in real time back to your main administrative office through your planning, through your documentation unit, which would update to the situation unit. Demobilizing, of course, is after the incident is over and you're taking everything down. Sometimes you have technical specialists. They provide special expertise useful in the incident management and response, maybe assigned to work in the planning section or in another section. Again, the pharmacist, epidemiologist, something like that. Logistics section, these folks are responsible for including acquiring resources from internal and external resources. Use standard and emergency acquisition procedures to acquire, make requests to local EOC or the Emergency Operations Center. So, for example, if you need more vaccination or more vaccine or more gloves or more whatever, and it's a state of emergency for the state, then we would be connecting you directly to that EOC person so that you get the resources in real time as quickly as you need them. They would be shipping it out and these things, batching things essentially on a big cart. The logistics section could have the service branch, which would be communications unit, the IT unit. You could have a staff, food, and water unit. The support branch underneath the logistics would be supply unit, facilities unit, transportation unit, a labor pool unit. Those would be some of the units that would be underneath the logistics section. You can have underneath the logistics, again, the communications unit organizes and coordinates internal and external communications, acts as custodian of all logged and documented communications, prepare ICS Form 205 communications plan, which is a form that is used during the incidents command structure. All these forms, I'll go ahead and send you a hyperlink, and I'll probably put it in our, just like this webinar, it's going to be archived on our group sites underneath emergency preparedness. We'll make sure that this information is there, all the forms for ICS. The communications underneath the logistics section, we talked already about that public information or public liaison officer. So the public liaison officer would have to be working very closely with the logistics section, particularly with the communications unit, about how do I communicate this outside? Who should I be talking to? When should I be talking to? Of course, the communication unit is also communicating with the EOC and all those other folks as well. The staff and food, they organize food and water storage, preparation, rationing during periods of anticipated or actual shortages, estimates the number of meals that are going to be needed, inventory the current emergency drinking water supply, estimate the time when resupply will be necessary, implement rationing if the situation dictates it, and reports inventory levels of emergency drinking water and food stores to logistics section chief. So again, the staff and food, the logistics section would be reporting back up to that section chief. If they needed more food and water brought in, then they would be coordinating with finance administration so that the finance administration section chief can go ahead and procure that additional resources that the logistics, staff, and food water unit is asking for. Supply unit orders and receives, stores, and distributes supplies, serves as non-expendable equipment, places resource orders, maintains inventory and supplies. The facilities unit sets up and maintains facilities, maintains integrity of the physical facility, provides adequate environmental controls to perform medical mission, and provides facility security and maintenance services, sanitation, lighting, and cleanup. Transportation unit organizes and coordinates transportation of all casualties, ambulatory and non-ambulatory, arranged for transportation of human and material resources to and from the facility. This is really important that we remember that this becomes the job of the logistics section within that transportation unit. So, for example, let's go back to that same incident where we had 911. And we had that incident where we had the collision, the 5-car crash, and 5 people are injured in our parking lot. The group that's responsible for coordinating with the ambulance is the transportation unit within the logistics section. So this one person would be responsible for that, not everybody on the planet. All right. Finance and admin, we'll go through this really quickly, and then we'll go ahead and go right back to our test. We're almost done. The finance admin section chief, their roles is responsible for the financial and cost analysis, oversee contract negotiations. For example, you might need to contract your pharmacist and get additional supplies, or need to purchase more vaccines or whatever. Track personnel and equipment time, process claims for accidents and injuries, works with logistics to ensure resources are procured, oversees the acquisition of supplies, services necessary to carry out the mission of the health center's medical mission, supervise and document expenditures relevant to the emergency management. So the finance admin section has the time unit, which is contract negotiations, monitoring, timekeeping, cost analysis, and compensation for injury. Those are the major activities underneath each of these units, which is the time unit, the procurement unit, claims unit, and cost unit. So, and we're going to give you a few scenarios. So here goes the scenario. At 8:30 on a chilly autumn day, an individual runs to the front desk and reports that a school bus has just collided with a concrete mixer in front of your building. There are multiple minor injuries. Who assumes, at 8:30, who's the incident's commander at one of your health centers? Are everybody there by 8, or people come in at 9? 8. So if you were there, then you're the incident's commander. If you're coming in at 9 and say the facilities manager is there and they're already there because they start their day at 8, then that person would become the incident's commander of your health center. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Right. Great. So let's go to another scenario really quickly. Scenario 2. The administrator on call arrives at the health center at the same time the local news arrives. What must be done before the administrator on call assumes the role of the incident's commander?
Transfer of command.
Transfer of command has to happen. Now, is the administrator on call and they arrived at the health center? Are they the people that's designated to talk to the news? Who's that person within the command staff?
Public information officer.
Correct. Very good. Very good. Here we go. Another scenario, general staff function. A transfer of command briefing occurs, and the administrator on call assumes the incident's commander role. All command staff positions are filled. What is the correct title for the command staff member who will manage the media to ensure that correct messages are communicated? Actually, we just did this one. I didn't realize I would put that up. So what is that again, guys?
Public information officer.
The public information officer.
Right.
Very good. So general staff function. Case scenario study number 4. The incident's commander established the operations section. With medical care, a special element for triage has been established with incident identical resources, common communication, and operating under the direct supervision of a leader. What is the correct title of this organizational element? It's called a branch, a division, a unit. What would you call that? You guys remember?
The branch.
The triage unit. A unit. So, number 5, general staff functions case study number 5. After the first hour of the incident commander established a second section that will develop the incident's action plan and track the status of the resources on the planned scene. What is the correct title of this section? And they're part of the general staff. And I just said that this section has to do the IAP.
Planning.
Planning, correct. The planning section is responsible for that. All right, another case area. As the evening progresses, more than 25 F2HC staff are on site along with significant numbers of family members. Given the number of individuals on site, there's a need to provide meals and water. Which section is responsible for providing these support resources to the families at the health center?
Logistics.
Logistics, correct. Very good. All right. Scenario number 7. Just before noon on the following day, all patients have been adequately treated and are evacuated or transferred. Which resource would be the resource you demobilize first and why?
Triage, because they're all taken care of?
Correct. Triage, because they're all taken care of. We don't need triage any longer. Very good. All right, so let's go ahead and look over really quickly at our test and look at number 7. So, who's responsible for determining the appropriate tactics for an incident? The safety officer, the operations section chief, the planning section chief, or the deputy incidents commander?
Planning section chief.
Planning section chief. Close.
Operations.
Operations. Remember, the operations is the people that are like the nursing staff, and they have to think about, do we have a medical unit? What's the scenario? What do we have to do? The planning section comes in for how long was this incident going to happen? What resources do we need? Who else needs to be here? Blah, blah, blah. But the operations section chief is the person that talks about the appropriate tactics for that incident. So B is the correct answer. So this one's a little tricky, so we'll see how you guys do here. The agency executive is responsible, and again, the agency would be any of those the executives that are part of that outside people. So if I was working with a outside agency and I'm in the command structure, who's that person that would do that? Who gets to talk to the public and coordinate with other groups?
The liaison.
The liaison. The liaison is the one that gets to talk to other agencies in terms of coordination of activities. So when we talk about this question, which is the trick question, they say the agency executive is responsible for overseeing the staging area, is responsible for managing the incident alongside the incident's commander, responsible for coordinating with other agencies throughout the liaison officer, and then responsible for establishing overall priorities and delegating authority to the incident's commander to manage the incident. So which of those is the true answer?
Sounds like C if it ties back to liaison.
That's correct. C is the correct answer. Very good. Interesting, they go back to back with this liaison thing. So number 9 is representatives from assisting and cooperating agencies and organizing coordination through the operations section chief, the liaison officer, the public information officer, or the logistics section chief. The liaison officer, B. Great. So we talked about resources within the staging area, which we also call the triage area. So this is a little harder, so I'm just going to kind of give this one to you. Well, I'll let you try to figure it out first, and then I'll give it to you if we don't get it. Resources within the staging areas are managed by the logistics section, are available and ready for assignment, include out-of-service resources that are being made ready for deployment, or include those being made ready for demobilization and return to the jurisdictions. D, correct, are ready and available for assignment. So in a staging area, we'll have everything that we need for that scenario ready right there for people. And then that is B, which is are available and ready for assignment. All right, we talked about span of control again for some time, so we're going to go back to this that pertains to the number of individuals or resources that one supervisor can manage effectively during an incident. Is key that to be effective incident, manager can only has to have this span of control. Again, it's that 3 to 7 optimally. We don't want to exceed 5 is the optimal for a span of control. Changing of the incident commander, we talked about that transfer of command is what that's called, and that's slide 111. At the simplest level, what are the 4 elements of an incident action plan, must-have, and then I'm just going to give this one to you really quickly. The big 4 are who needs to do what has to be done, when does it need to be done, and how long is this going to happen. So all that happens in an IAP plan. Again, this could be informal or formal. The formal writing has to go to what section is responsible for the IAP planning?
Hey, Duane, what question are you on?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's not a question on the test. It's a question on the slides.
Okay.
Sorry, it's on slide number 112. And then we're going to go right back to the test.
Okay.
So the question that I was asking was, who is responsible for the development of the IAP in the section, in the general staff? Which group is responsible? The operations, the planning, the finance?
Planning.
Planning, correct. Or logistics. Great, planning. Woo-hoo, go us. All right, so during the operational briefing, now I'm going back, I'm just going to talk about this before we answer it. During that operational briefing, that's where we really get into the details of what happens or what's happening and who's going to be assigned what. We do those operational briefings all the time, but when there's a transfer of command, we call that an operational briefing. Every time there's any type of big update, like a change, a transfer of command, or we're going to be doing something different, that's when you're bringing everybody together, and that's called an operational briefing. In that operational briefing, it's really, really critical that we talk about what individual resources do we have and who's assigned to do what task. So in answering question 11, the operational briefing, it presents the IAP for the upcoming period to the supervisory personnel. It provides an orientation to individual resources at the beginning of their assignment. It sets forth the specific tasks, reporting relationships, and expectations for support staff only, kind of added that only there to help us out, and helps keep the public and media informed about the incident status and operating accomplishments. Which do you think this is?
C.
C or B? And it's a little tricky.
I'm going to say C.
C.
Say C. So you guys are really close. It is B. C, the reason why C is wrong is expectations for support staff. Everybody is at the operational briefing, and everybody gets assigned the reporting relationships and the task. So B is a better answer than C, but close. Next one is, which section is responsible for handling claims related to property damage? This is question number 12 on the test. For property.
So, Duane, did you say 11 was B as in Brian?
B as in Brian instead of C as in cat.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Number 12 is, which section is responsible for handling claims related to property damage, injuries, or fatalities at the incident, operations section, planning section, logistics section, or finance and admin?
Finance and admin.
Finance and admin. I told you guys about a form which is also called the Incidents Action Plan, and you got to complete this form every time you do an incident. And it's at Form 202, Form 215, Form 201. Which of those forms?
201.
201, yay, woo, go us. So, 14. Who typically facilitates the operational period briefing? And we said every time there's an operational briefing, this group is also responsible for the IAP development. Public Information Officer, Logistics Section Chief, Agency Representative, or Planning Section Chief?
Planning.
Planning Section Chief, D is correct. Very good, folks. Question 15. Select a true statement. A, ICS positions may be combined in order to save on staffing and achieve a higher level of efficiency. True or false?
True.
So, some people think that's true or false? Think it's true or false?
False.
False.
Why is it false, guys? What is that concept that says we have to have a ratio of supervisor to staff? Span of control. So we don't want to have more people, so we have higher efficiency, because we have less efficiency when we have one supervisor to like 9 people. We want to keep that again to 3 to 7. So that's a false statement. ICS encourages B. ICS encourages the use of unique position titles in order to better meet the specific incident's needs. That sounds pretty true, right?
Yes.
Kind of, right? Encourages the unique titles in order to better meet the specific incident's needs. C. The ICS organization structure should include only the functions and positions needed to achieve the incident's objectives.
True.
That also is true, right? So ICS recognizes the incident's commander may not be necessary if the operations section chief is assigned. Is that true?
False.
False. So now we're between B and C. So ICS does encourage unique position titles in order to better meet the specific incident's needs. However, a better answer is that ICS organization structure should include only the functions and positions needed to achieve the incident's objectives. You don't have to have just the unique position titles in order to meet the specific needs of the incident. You only come up with the position, the organization, the modular structure based on the incident. So whatever the incident's objectives to be completed, that's how we build out the incident's command structure. It's based off of those incident objectives, not just about the titles. So C is a better answer. I know, a little tricky, right? So here's one that we didn't go over in the slides, but I'm going to make sure that you understand it really quickly. So this is question 16 of 20. Chris Smith is a situation unit leader. So a unit leader would be under only 2 areas, right? Operations have units, and the planning section has a unit. No planning section chief is assigned. Who does Chris Smith report to? If you don't, would it be the operations section chief, the incidents commander, the public information officer, or no direct supervisor?
Operations.
Operations section chief. Correct. So I'm gonna pull out some information because I did see some in this particular area. It was really interesting because the situation unit leader has to come underneath the planning section, right? But if they said no planning section, so normally you would think the operations section chief would be the right answer because there's only 2 sections that have units, right? But because underneath the planning section, there is a unit called the situation unit, and if that planning section chief wasn't there, it would actually go up to the incidents commander. But I'm going to pull out, when I send you guys the actual summary of which is what I use to make these slides, I'll point out the page number in the briefing that tells you the answer to that, because it really is a trick question, and it should be the incidents commander. But I'll send that. So that should be B, guys. Instead of A, which we would think it would be. Okay, so which positions make up the command staff? Public Information Officer, Liaison Officer, and Safety Officer, that's A. B is the Safety Officer, the Logistics Section Chief, the Public Information Officer. C is the Staging Area Manager, the Safety Officer, and Liaison Officer. Or D, the Liaison Officer, the Public Information Officer, and the Agency Executive. And we're talking about the command staff here. Which is it, A, B, C, or D?
It's A.
It is A. That is correct. Right. Next, 18. Select the true statement. Upon arriving at an incident, the higher-ranking person will assume command, maintain command as is, or reassign command to a third party. Is that true or false? The higher-ranking person.
True.
Remember, whoever's the most familiar should be the incident commander, not the person that has a title at the organization. So that would be a false statement. A lower-ranking but more qualified person may not be designated as the incident's commander.
False.
That's false. Transfer of command procedures are implemented at the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center, before the incident commander arrives at the scene. True or false?
False.
False. Transfer of command only occurs when a new incident commander is arriving on the scene, not beforehand. D, when a new incident commander assumes command, the outgoing incident commander should be demobilized to avoid confusion.
True.
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 True. Correct. Very good. So 19, the medical unit is responsible for, and the medical unit comes under what section? Operations, finance, planning, or logistics?
Operations.
Operations, correct. So the medical unit is responsible for providing emergency services to injured victims at the accident scene. They're providing medical screening, evaluation, and follow-up of employees who are assigned to an incident, coordinating with public health services to determine where critical resources are deployed, authorizing and purchasing any medical supplies and services. A, providing emergency services to injured victims at the accident scene. That is correct. All right, let's go to the last question. Which general staff position conducts tactical operations, develops the tactical objectives of an organization, and directs all tactical resources? Finance Administrative Section Chief, Logistics Section Chief, Planning Section Chief, or Operations Section Chief?
Operations Section Chief.
Operations Section Chief, D. That is the correct answer. Good job, guys. So that is it for this particular webinar on ICS 200. I will send out the additional slides later today by first thing in the morning at the latest. That are slides, there's another 30 slides that just kind of go over the briefing section, which is section 5, a little bit more detail. We also have Section 6, which kind of talks more about resources, Section 7, which talks about the transfer of command, and then the Section 8 is just a summary of what we just did, just kind of all of the sections kind of combined. It's just a few slides that has a few additional questions on it that may be helpful for you when you do your exam. But we kind of went over the exam. I can't necessarily say that I gave you any questions because I will deny that, or any answers to these questions. What you can do is before you take the ICS 200, I would just encourage you to look at the course summary. You can have that printed out as you're taking the course, or as you're taking the ICS quiz online, and you'll be taking it at FEMA.gov. We will send out the email that will have the FEMA.gov hyperlink, so where you can go to take this particular one, and you want to take ICS 200 HCA, which is the one for healthcare professionals, not the general IS 200, which is for the general public and other people that are not healthcare practitioners. Any questions before we hang up the call right now from the webinar?
Nope, good job, thanks.
Thank you so very much, everybody. You all have a great day, and I'll talk to everybody real soon. Take care.
Good.
All right, bye-bye now.
Bye.
Thank you.